I trust you're all doing well and keeping up. We are on module 15, which officially takes us three-quarters of the way through. So if you're going through this for the first time, congratulations. If you're behind, I would definitely encourage you to try and catch up or keep pace. We did check a few of your records, which I'm able to do to see where you are. However, for those who have gone through it, I can't tell where you are because you're just showing us fully complete. So, congratulations for completing it and going through it. This one is relational wisdom, what we're talking about. And uh, Brian made a comment earlier, which I thought was very, when we met as a group of leaders. So, Brian, I'm going to ask you to share that. It's just a
Okay.
profound statement.
Okay. I just said that I thought the soft skills are actually really hard. The hard skills are the easy bit. The technical bit is the easy bit. If there's anything in my experience that's difficult, it's what we call the soft skills, which are the conversations.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And it's interesting if you go back to the session last week, we talked about estate planning, and I think the soft skills are needed for most of the steps that we went through. So yeah, so that is interesting because the technical was number five. And remember, Ron talked about how or maybe he didn't talk a lot about this, but I feel it's typical for most advisors to jump to the technical because advisors are in the know. Let's face it, advisors have a very good understanding and usually the technical skills. And Brian, as you say, that's the easy part. It's not
Mm.
when you're starting in the industry. I remember when I started in the industry, I felt pretty intimidated, to be honest. I felt like I didn't know a lot. I felt my soft skills were probably stronger than the hard skills. But as time goes on, you pick up more of the technical, you pick up more of the knowledge, but the soft skills can become more challenging, I think, or I wonder if it's because we lean on the technical. But if you think about it, really, it's the soft skills and the building of relationships that really deepen things, deepen your relationships with clients. It's not really the technical stuff, is it? Like maybe you can impress people with your knowledge of the technical. And I've been in meetings where I was like, kind of you pat yourself on the back, man, I know so much, or these clients know so little, one or the other. Uh, because the technical you're able to work through it, but the soft skills are really what moves you along. So Vincent, I chatted with Vincent earlier, or yeah, later last week, but a few days ago, and he raised an interesting question. And I find it very interesting how this talk said hard skills multiplied by the soft skills provides the value to your clients. So, what value is coming to your clients? It's the combination of both. So, you do need the technical but you need the soft skills as well. And I don't know how you'd rank, what you would need most in a relationship. But as time has gone on in the business for me, I felt the soft skills, Brian, yeah, maybe they may have been maybe more challenging, but they're probably more important than the technical. So I don't know if you would agree with that or not. But Vincent brought up an interesting point or an interesting question that Vincent, I'd love for you to jump in and share a little bit about that as we get started, because I think it's a good tie-in to what we've talked about previously and leading into this topic on relational wisdom.
Yeah, I hope I get the question right, Lauren, that you think about. But so I had a client meeting last week, the second one. It's with a couple that has a medical professional corporation, and we did the pie chart budget with the clients. So that was the first client meeting. The real first one was more kind of just lay the foundation in terms of, what we do, etc. But I did pick up that they are believers. So we went through the budget, the pie chart, and obviously they're quite high earners, but there was absolutely no giving um, at all
Yeah, no, close it.
in the
Yeah,
budget.
yeah.
And so um, I did as I went through the pie chart, I obviously talk about the reason for giving, and I've also with clients now started some of the initial conversations with the 12 transferable concepts and the five reasons for the pie chart, the principles and the concepts around that. So busy planting the seeds with clients, but I kind of found it difficult how to move that conversation forward.
Mm,
Even though, I mean, it's a big, hard thing, the whole generosity, giving, God owns it all. Um, and so I guess it was just I was a bit stuck in terms of how do I take this conversation forward with clients that I've only seen twice so far online. I haven't met them in person. Um, and whether it is just a matter of planting the seed and kind of circle back to that over time, and keep on exposing them to some material, for them to be able to slowly kind of get used to it. And I've seen it with another client that also high earners. They're not believers, but she said, um, Vincent, you've mentioned about this giving thing a few times now. It's like why? It's never been part of our planning concept.
mm.
Uh, and so with them, we're starting to have the conversation how we can set up a 1% kind of giving target for them in their budget. Um, but I think my question is just it's still early days with this set of clients. They kind of notion that they are believers, so I can go down that direction. But Lauren, yeah, I think it was more just what is the next step? I know that we have to pray and ask for help, and God has been so patient, even with, obviously with me as well in my whole journey.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, just like to know what the next step should be on that.
Yeah. That's good. And I think that is really where the soft skills come in to the equation is knowing when to make the move. Because Brian made the comment, maybe it's a little early in the relationship to be going deeper. And that's something I thought was interesting how he talked about the God aware, the self aware, and the others aware. So it's that sensitivity of knowing how far you can go with the client in conversation, when to go deeper, how deep to go at a particular stage. I think that's the epitome of the soft skills. Um, Anybody else want to weigh in on that very quickly?
I agree with Brian. It seems a bit early, but it reminds me of where we're presenting other strategies like inheritance tax planning. I will mention that even at the first meeting, no matter what age the people are. And then every year after that, or every review, I will keep coming back to that and raise the issue again. And then finally, they bite the bullet and do something, most of
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with giving, it's almost, for me, it's a change of mindset to consider giving alongside those strategies. So it's something I need to build in more than I do,
Yeah.
but to treat it just like another strategy that may or may not take up, but keep
Hmm.
putting it in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Vincent, I think I can give a little bit of, it just happened last week. It may be helpful. People not used to giving at all. But frankly, people have a choice, and the choice was pay more tax or give it to charity.
Hmm.
And we're betting 1,000 so far on which choice they take,
Mm.
as I think everybody would expect. So juxtaposing it one with the others may be an opening point, and then you can get into go deeper from that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
there's still some money they will pay, Paul, yeah, if they pay to donations, but there's definitely that offset. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
and,
And
and the thing,
to be candid, what I was going with is it was a flow through share combined. So I don't know whether
Oh,
that's
okay. Fair enough.
familiar with everybody, but
Yes.
it was a net positive
Yeah.
for giving.
Okay. Hmm. That's
and
interesting.
I think the somebody mentioned the heart conversation, and I am convinced the reason Jesus talked so much about money was not for money itself, but it was because of the heart conversations and the impact on the heart and the potential change in the heart. This is where the soft skills really come in to play because it's it's bringing them to the point. Okay, well, what motivates them? Does saving tax motivate them? And ultimately, I think about what Ron Blue shares: giving breaks the power of money, right? So ultimately, we want to move the heart of our clients to the place that the hold that money has on their lives are broken. And that does take some soft skills. Let's be real. It's so I agree with you, Paul. The tax conversation to me is a good opener, and it makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, we want to be moving the heart of the client. And if we believe that giving breaks the power of money, well,
Hmm.
maybe tax is the first motivation, but it can lead to a heart change,
Hmm.
right? And I think that is very powerful to think about in reality. So I'm just going to go back to a previous slide from I don't even know if I showed this slide last week, but the three questions that are asked in the estate planning, the wealth transfer, that whole piece. What is the worst or best thing that can happen if I or we as a couple transfer these dollars to and name the child or the heir? How serious is that? And how likely is that to occur? I bring that up simply because this also relates very much to giving, but it ties also very much into the soft skills. So this is not just about the technical and the tax, it's going to the heart. And I think that's a powerful thing to be considering. And the answers change over time, which means this is an ongoing conversation. It's not asking once and you're done. So, Vincent, going back to your question about generosity, it's not asking once. And I think it's easy to ask the question once or to raise it once, but you brought up, one of your clients is saying, "Yeah, well, you've raised this a couple of times, right?" And I think that's an important piece, which means it's an important part of your planning. And Brian asked a good question in the chat as well. Why are these clients coming to you? And I would ask you to consider that question in regards to one, why the client is coming to you, what's in their heart in coming. But the second way I would pose that question is from God's perspective. which we often don't consider God's perspective of why is he bringing those clients to you?
Mm.
And I think that's sometimes the part that's left out of the equation. We can easily concentrate on why the clients came because they're going to talk about the concerns of why they came. But the deeper question is, why did God bring these clients to you? That's being God aware. So I like that in the piece about the relational wisdom. It's the awareness of, okay, God, why are you bringing these clients to me? I bring up this slide simply because this again is not a technical question or not a question, but I guess love your children equally and as such treat them uniquely. Boy, that's a challenging one. You know, when you think about those things, how difficult is it to have these conversations?
Mm.
So back to the relational wisdom piece, it really ties into how God aware are we? And I found it very interesting for him to say, he brought up a verse in Ephesians, if you remember from your watching the content, the verse in Ephesians, it starts with God aware and it ends with God aware. And I don't know how about you, but a lot of times in my client meetings, I was not necessarily God aware enough. I was more client aware. I was aware of the client's concerns, but didn't think a lot about God's concern for the clients. That was not necessarily part of my thinking. So maybe that's a stretch even in your thinking. But, others aware, yeah, we're aware of the client's needs. I think we're aware of why the client is brought to us or why they're coming to us, but why did God bring them to us is a much deeper question.
Lorne, if I can just quickly say, just what you say on that one now, if I look at myself for the last 2 years, this it definitely bothers me when I sat with a client and I asked, "What do you want?" And they say, "I want to make as much money as possible."
Hmm.
It, I don't think this would have bothered me that much even like 2 years ago.
Right.
But now it bothers me just because I've done the core training.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so that, I mean, just for that sake, it's been good, and kind of be aware of where the conversation is likely to go. But um, yeah, I think part of uh, Liz, what you also said, I think part of this thing for me is to slowly move in the right direction. With a tip,
Hmm.
with your blogs, for example, or newsletters to clients, or social media, or visualization, whatever, just to keep on planting the seeds. I think that's part of, or discipleship course. I'm
Yeah.
gonna.
Yeah. Good, Vincent. I really think what you're saying is important because your awareness of spiritual aspects of financial planning has been, I don't know if awakened is the right word, but there's more of a sensitivity, I guess, of the spiritual issues around financial planning. And to me, you can't go wrong with that because, yeah, it's more the God awareness. Henny.
Yeah, I think it's obviously an interesting conversation, and it has been. So I might be stepping on toes a little bit by saying what I say now, but it's obviously the history of, or not the history, the sort of core training as it is put out helps the Christian advisor more often to work with the Christian client and sort of getting them through a
Mhm.
certain place. So it's it's good to have these sort of set amount of rules that we or not rules, but ways that we can work with the Christian. It's easy to speak about generosity because you're working with a Christian client, so he's keeping himself accountable to a certain standard. But the Kingdom Advisor core training is good. And that's why it makes such a big difference in us personally as well, because we're, again, a Christian advisor looking for something more. And it changes our hearts in how we should think as a Christian advisor working with a Christian client. But there's a lot of work that we then still need to do in how do we then also bring this across to the non-Christian client, because we are also, so the soft skills is actually quite a good piece that we are working with, because soft skills can be secular and worldly as well, because we just show that we care. And because we show that we care, the client starts asking the questions that we want them to ask. So Wayne Knowles at our conference last year did a very good talk just on creating certain prompts that the client actually is the one that starts asking the questions, but why are you different? Why are you handling things in this way? Why are you looking at it at a different perspective to the secular advisor that I had? And it actually looks like you care a little bit more. And those are the conversations when we get to the point where it's a it's actually a discipling journey that we're going on with the client. And it
Hmm.
could be first that you can actually sit with the client and actually he can have his come to Christ moment while you're in this meeting. It could be the first time that he's actually spoken to someone, that he's actually met someone that actually loves God more than he loves money. And that could be a whole different journey. And we've got to be aware of those opportunities where we actually do work with a client in that way, that we have the opportunity to pray for the client, to look past what he needs, but we do need to meet the client where he is. So
Yeah.
it's going on a journey. You've got to listen to his story. You've got to carry on with the story. But the core training, I don't believe is the only answer to us being equipped to be able to do this. I think this is where community is important, where study groups are important, where our time together is important, and having these type of conversations amongst each other as well. So, um, different clients, different things that we need to work with. But we've got to get to the heart of the issue. And I think that's sort of the cool thing in a journey with a client is we can be symptomatic and help symptoms. That is sort of done by the hard things. But the soft skills is more that space of getting to the true below the iceberg issues that we need to sort
Yeah.
of below the water kind of issues that we need to sort out. And that we can do because we care about the client, irrespective if he's a Christian or not. We just literally do care about him, because he doesn't need to know that we care about his soul maybe more than his sort of worldly side of it. But we have the opportunity to to make disciples or to create this disciples of Jesus, because all we're doing is
Mhm.
pointing to Jesus. We're not really pointing to anything of the world. Clients are going to realize that there's something different, and that's the cool thing. And that takes time sometimes. So.
Yeah, that's good, Henny. I appreciate that. I had to put this slide up in relation to what you were saying. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because
Mhm.
they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Relate that to our role as financial professionals. People coming in to
Mhm.
see us, often they're like sheep without a shepherd. They need someone to help them in so many ways. But what I loved about this session was what was said about emotion. And motion means to move. Emotion means to move. So God gave us emotions to move us. So think about that in client relationships. Often the meetings can become emotional. We can be moved with compassion toward our clients. I mean, that's powerful to think about the role that God places us in, and we are in a position to help move the clients from one place to another. Um, and think about trying to think about the name, but moving people onto God's agenda. Blackaby, Henry Blackaby wrote that in Experiencing God. It's like what an opportunity we have, even with non-Christian clients. Through emotion, we can move them. So that's pretty powerful. Tim, did you have a point that you wanted to make? I guess you lowered your
Yeah,
hand, but did have it raised.
yeah, thanks, Lauren. Just becoming aware of the potential trap of thinking if we're working with a Christian client, they're going to think a certain way, and if we're dealing with a secular client, they're going to think a different way, a certain way,
Hmm.
and not to overlook the role of culture and money stories and history and childhood experiences, etc. And it reminded me of that story that we were talking about last week with the wealthy man who came to Jesus and said, I've done everything. What more do
Hmm.
I need to do? The outward appearance was a devout, religious person who was potentially on the same page as all the disciples and the hundreds of people walking along with Jesus. But as you said earlier, God looks at the heart, and he looks at the one thing that we haven't yet surrendered. And I think when we use words like surrender, for example, or meaning or purpose, it allows us to speak to so-called secular clients as well as Christian clients in a way that moves them, and looks at their meaning, looks at their purpose, and then giving starts to easily flow into that conversation. Because if you're going to look at meaning and purpose, one of the ways of acting that out is through generosity and giving. And that I see that as something that is cultural, maybe more than religious. So if whichever client you're talking to in that moment, that allows them to start thinking deeper. And I heard somewhere, read recently that, and I don't know how true this is, but I think the guy who was not who was not willing to sell all his stuff and follow Jesus, I'm pretty sure that's the guy who paid for Jesus' tomb. And I think some of the Jewish tradition is that, or Christian tradition of the time, was that he eventually did come around to what it looked like to surrender his wealth. And again, that speaks to time and the journey.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thanks, Tim, for sharing that. Really appreciate it. We got to go to our breakouts shortly, but Ray, you have something you want to share as well? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just a quick comment, Lauren. I mean, just to summarize, I think in my mind, for everything that everybody has said, Henny, Tim, and yourself, um, really moving people. Be, I go back to the fact you can't really move somebody unless you understand where they're at. You've got to really be able to use their, understand where they're at, what they're thinking, what their expectations are. And once we have that sorted out, then you're able to move them, and that takes time. Like Brian was saying, some things are too early, some things, and I think somebody says you can start early, but it depends on how you structure your business, what your goals are, where you want your business to look like, and then understanding where the client is at and really get a good feel for them, and then able to move them into the direction that you want to be able to do, where your business strategies looks like. Anyway, I just want to close that with
Yeah,
that.
that's awesome. Great conversation. We have ran over time. I'm not even going to bother to apologize because the conversation is rich, and I appreciate everybody sharing. We're now going to break into smaller groups where you can share a little bit more intimately together. And I trust you really value this time. So, Zoe, if you could just send us all to our rooms, that would be awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Just learning to reevaluate your emotions and go, actually, this isn't me. This is the journey they're on. I'm here to serve.
That's it.
Some awesome conversations. Appreciate I got to pop in on three of the groups, but yeah, and definitely heard some examples of challenging conversations, heart level conversations that require relational wisdom. So I'm going to ask some of the groups if you want to share. Some of you spoke about the acrostics that were mentioned like read, and I'm going to bring up another one which is GPS that was shared. And I'm going to do this, and I want to give you an opportunity, each of your groups, if you want to share something for the last 9 minutes that we have together. I'd be happy if you did that. Glorify God, pursue God, and serve God. So thinking about the God positioning system, I thought that was such a neat way. How is God positioned here? How are we glorifying God in this? And I just absolutely love this verse that Jesus spoke, John 8, verse 29. The one who sent me is within me. He has not left me alone. So think about your role, where you are as a financial professional, the role that you do. He has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases him. So think about the conversations that you have. This is an amazing verse to actually memorize for any situation that you're dealing with. The last part, particularly, Jesus said, I always do what pleases the Father. Can we say that about our client conversations? Wow, that's a big one. And so the question is, what would please God in this situation? So,
Mm.
yeah, any thoughts on that or anything else that you shared in your time of sharing together? Anybody want to jump in?
I'll share one that might be linked, but I had a really nasty complaint a couple of years ago. My insurer said there is absolutely no claim here. The woman shouldn't have any money. You've served her well. And I had to agree. And I was quite surprised by their response. And in the end, at one point, she was told that she should take a course of action by the regulator. And I actually went back to her and I said, don't do that. You want to go a different way, which was better for her interests.
Hmm.
And in the end, it was quite bizarre, really. The regulator had a very funny attitude, but the claim was for £150,000, not insignificant for me, and she halved it to 75. I don't need the other 75,
Hmm.
which was a result. So
Wow.
I think by continuing to try and serve her, she saw that I was actually
Hmm.
acting in her interests to some degree, and probably knew that all the way through, I hope. But
Yeah. Yeah.
just share that.
Good. Yeah,
That was a
that's
bit of a
that's awesome, Liz. Thank you. And yeah, another acrostic. I love how you work that in the serve,
yes.
which is smile, explore and empathize, reconcile, value, and encourage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it certainly sounds like you live that out in that kind of dramatic experience, if you will. That's nobody wants to see those complaints come, but I think sometimes in this business, it's almost impossible for them not to come. But if we serve well, we can work through it, whatever comes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Vincent had a really good point. Um, he said that he found getting any deeper with clients is quite draining, but to open up discussions amongst clients, so put it out there amongst your client base to have a webinar or a discussion group, and then invite somebody in to talk on a particular topic. So you might have half an hour, maybe an hour long, but half an hour where you start um, opening discussions amongst clients, but talking about the principles and values of the scriptures and bringing in different principles. And I thought that was a really good idea and something that was well worth taking on board, not just about building relationships amongst your clients, but also about helping them develop
Hmm.
um, in their own understanding of like how does the money teach? I mean, we're doing this course on like the Bible. I don't know anyone who's done a course like this on the Bible outside of financial advice. So we're in a really good position to be able to help them.
Hmm. Hmm. Very good. Thanks, Angus. I don't know, Vincent, if you wanted to add anything, but or anyone else like to chime in.
Yeah, I think maybe just exploring that direction. And if anyone wants to participate on that, Angus, you definitely in, um, is to, yeah, I think let me know. It will be interesting, to journey with
Mm.
other financial advisors and share the platform with, let's say, a group of 10 clients, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, because the nice thing about what we do is these are principles, that people can live by. So sharing these principles are extremely valuable. Everybody is, whether they realize it or not, they are looking for principles to live by, to guide their lives and their financial ship or their financial house, however you want to illustrate it, as to what they're building or where they're going. Principles will guide them to get there. So, and the relational wisdom is really what helps you share that.
Mm.
And we all know that there are difficult conversations that can come when because difficult situations come to clients, come to individuals. They come to all of us. And we need somebody who has relational wisdom when we're going through some challenging times like that. And our clients need someone. So why can't we be that person who can share that relational wisdom? So the Lord wants us to be equipped to be able to do that. All right, we got 2 minutes left. Anybody? Last call to share.
In our group, I thought Ryan gave some wonderful advice. He said at one point early on in his business, he'd have clients brought up to his office. And then later on in his business, he adopted the approach of going down to meet his clients himself and receive them. And on that way, he would pray and kind of ask God for guidance and wisdom as to what was needed to be done with that client. And I thought that aligns so beautifully with the concept of sensitivity, and also that scripture we shared now about saying God is in me. So let me ask God what's about to happen. What does God want me to know about the situation? Because God is the source of the wisdom. And as much as we'd love to lean on principles and guidelines, they're not the source of wisdom. They're frameworks for us to access that wisdom.
Tim, thank you for sharing that, and Ryan particularly for sharing that, because I think that is so powerful. And it's a great reminder. I remember Ron mentioning, and you can probably remember this as well if you've been going through that training, where he said, pray before the meeting, pray during the meeting, and pray after the meeting. Right? It's an inclusion of God, and Ryan, as you go to greet your client, it doesn't even have to be a verbal prayer. In some cases it could be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But it's a focus of getting your heart toward God, that God awareness. And I love how our speaker brought that out. You start with God awareness and you end with God awareness. And in between, there's a self awareness. So, what you're bringing, and then there's an others awareness. So, yeah, this has been such a powerful module. And yeah, I definitely encourage you to revisit, certainly utilize what's here when it comes to relational wisdom. And it's powerful to think that this is not just about the technical skills, which I think is very much often a focus in this industry, is the knowledge. It's knowing how to technically deal with, I guess, provide a product, if you will, provide a solution to the client. And this relational wisdom is going so much deeper and it's so much more meaningful. So, bless you on the journey. And next week, we're module 16, which is leadership and discipleship. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but as you go through this module after module, it tends to get deeper and deeper and deeper. So we are going deep. So leadership, discipleship is always deep. There are 6 lessons to work through in this one, so maybe a little longer. So take your time this week to work through it, and we will see you again back here next week. Same place, same channel. Blessings, everyone. Have a great week.